A doctor sometimes faces moments when they must never tell their patient the full truth. In October 1988, Dr. Marcus Conant faced exactly such a moment. He was holding Sylvester's hospital file, and among the pages, he found a detail he couldn't believe: 127 morphine doses in the last 12 weeks. Protocol maximum was 80. Something was going very wrong. Sylvester kept demanding morphine. Nurses were secretly trying to lower the doses, but he noticed and grew angrier. One night, Sylvester looked at the doctor and said one sentence: "Stop lying to me. I'm not stupid." And the doctor understood in that moment. Sylvester knew everything. His morphine addiction, his body's collapse, that his time was running out. But still, he didn't stop. Because there was a reason Sylvester chose morphine that nobody thought about. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Because the truths that will emerge in the continuation of this story will deeply affect you. Summer 1987, the first sign summer was hot in San Francisco, and Sylvester was sweating on stage. He was giving a concert at the Castro Theater, and the audience was on their feet, applauding, shouting. But something was wrong inside Sylvester. The cough wouldn't stop, his nights were interrupted, he woke up tired in the mornings. At first, he thought it was simple bronchitis. Everyone said so, his friends, his manager, even he wanted to believe it. But the cough wouldn't go away. One weekend in August, he couldn't go on stage, and his manager convinced him to see a doctor. The doctor examined him, took x-rays, did blood tests. While waiting for the results, Sylvester appeared calm, but inside he was filled with anxiety. Because he already knew. His boyfriend Rick Cranmer had died with the same symptoms a year ago. AIDS. That terrible word. That hidden enemy. When the diagnosis came, Sylvester wasn't surprised. He was HIV positive, and the disease was progressing rapidly. Doctors gave him medications to buy time, but those medications only extended the duration, not the pain. When Sylvester left the hospital, he looked in the mirror and saw a face he didn't recognize. There were circles under his eyes, his face was pale, and there was a growing fear inside him. But that fear wasn't fear of death. Sylvester wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of pain. He was afraid of losing control. And he was afraid of not being able to go on stage. What Sylvester didn't tell anyone was that the fear had been building for months before the diagnosis. Every morning he woke up, he would run his fingers along his neck, checking for swollen lymph nodes. Every time he looked in the mirror, he searched for the purple lesions that marked so many of his friends. He had watched Rick deteriorate in those final months, watched the way the disease stripped away not just his body but his dignity, his independence, his very self. And now, standing in his apartment on Castro Street, staring at his own reflection, Sylvester saw the same future waiting for him. The reflection looked back with eyes that knew too much. He had performed for presidents, danced in front of thousands, made the world bend to his vision of beauty and freedom. But none of that mattered now. The virus didn't care about fame or talent or the revolution he had sparked on dance floors across America. It was patient, methodical, inevitable. By fall, Sylvester was still on stage. In small clubs, at private events, sometimes singing to just a few hundred people. But after each concert, his body hurt more. His legs were going numb, his hands were shaking, and even breathing was starting to become difficult. One night in November, he almost fell going on stage. His friends caught him by the arms and took him backstage. There, sitting in a chair, eyes closed, Sylvester whispered, "I can't take it anymore." January 1988. Hospital admission. When the new year began, Sylvester was lying in San Francisco General Hospital. He had been diagnosed with neuropathy, the damage AIDS caused to the nervous system. There was a burning sensation everywhere in his body, as if his skin was covered with fire. Doctors gave him painkillers, but they didn't work. As days passed, the pain increased, and Sylvester couldn't sleep anymore. At night, he would lie in his hospital room, stare at the ceiling, and wait for the pain to subside. But it didn't subside. It never subsided. One night, head nurse Rita entered the room and saw Sylvester crying. Silently, tears were running down his cheeks, and his body was shaking. Rita approached him and held his hand. Sylvester looked at her and said, "Give me something. Please. Whatever it is, just stop this pain." Rita didn't know what to do in that moment. Protocol was clear: painkillers were limited, morphine was only to be used as a last resort. But the pain in Sylvester's eyes was stronger than protocol. Rita called the doctor and asked for permission. The doctor hesitated but finally agreed. The first morphine dose was given that night. Sylvester's face changed instantly. The pain began to disappear, his muscles relaxed, and for the first time in weeks, he took a comfortable breath. He closed his eyes and fell asleep. Rita watched him and thought to herself, maybe this was the right decision. But nobody knew that this decision would change Sylvester's life forever. The first days of morphine, savior or enemy? The first week, morphine was miraculous. Sylvester was no longer in pain, he could sleep, he could even eat a little. When visitors came, he could talk with them, he smiled. His friends were relieved, perhaps the worst period had passed. But in the second week, something started to change. The morphine's effect lasted shorter. Sylvester was calling nurses more frequently. "Is it time for the shot? The pain is coming back." Nurses looked at the schedule, only 4 hours had passed, he needed to wait 2 more hours for the next dose. But Sylvester couldn't wait. He writhed in bed, hours stretched into eternity. Doctors noticed the situation and became concerned. They wanted to increase the morphine dose, but this carried risks too. Risk of addiction, risk of respiratory depression, and worse, the body developing tolerance to morphine. A meeting was held, Sylvester's condition was discussed. Dr. Conant examined the file and said, "If we increase the dose, addiction will be inevitable. But if we don't increase it, the pain will be unbearable. We have to choose between the two." The team was silent. Nobody wanted to make that decision. Finally, the decision was left to Sylvester. The doctor explained the situation to him. They could increase the morphine dose, but that meant addiction. Sylvester thought for a long time. His eyes were distant, as if remembering the past. Then he looked at the doctor and said, "Increase the dose." "Is addiction worse than death?" "No. But pain is worse than death." The doctor nodded and increased the dose. In those early weeks of morphine, Sylvester experienced something he hadn't felt in months: hope. Not hope for survival, he was too realistic for that, but hope for quality. Hope that his remaining time could be lived rather than merely endured. He started making plans again, small ones at first. He wanted to record one more song, something stripped down and honest, just his voice and a piano. He wanted to see the ocean one more time, feel the San Francisco fog on his face. He even talked about performing again, maybe just one intimate show, for friends and the community that had lifted him up when the world tried to tear him down. Rita noticed the change in him during her rounds. He wasn't just a patient anymore, he was Sylvester again. He asked her to bring him a mirror, fussed with the few possessions he'd brought to the hospital, even hummed a few bars of melody. For those precious weeks, morphine wasn't stealing his life, it was giving it back. But deep down, in a place he wouldn't let himself examine too closely, Sylvester knew this peace was temporary. He knew what came next. He had seen it happen to too many others. The drug that saved you eventually owned you. March 1988, losing control in March, Sylvester was discharged from the hospital. He returned home, but his need for morphine continued. A prescription was written, regular doses were set, and a nurse started visiting him twice a day. The first days were good. Sylvester was home, felt comfortable, and even started listening to some music. But a week later, problems began. The morphine dose wasn't enough. When the nurse arrived in the morning, Sylvester met her at the door. "Why are you late?" "I need it." The nurse looked at her watch, she was only 10 minutes late. But for Sylvester, those 10 minutes were torture. In April, doses were increased again. 2 shots a day, 3 shots, then 4 shots. Sylvester's arms filled with needle marks. His veins started hardening, nurses had difficulty finding suitable spots. One day the nurse told him, "Sylvester, your veins can't take anymore. We need to find alternative routes. But Sylvester wasn't listening. Only one thing mattered to him: morphine. In May, his friends started getting worried. When they visited Sylvester, they found him asleep. When he woke up, his eyes were blurry, his speech was slow, and sometimes he didn't recognize them. One friend asked him, "Sylvester, are you okay? Do you want to tell us something?" Sylvester looked at him and smiled, but that smile wasn't like before. It was forced, empty, and there was deep fatigue behind it. Then he said, "I'm fine. Just a little tired." In June, a crisis occurred. Sylvester missed a morphine dose one night. The nurse was sick and no replacement could be found. Sylvester was alone at home, and the pain came back. But this time it wasn't just physical pain. It was morphine withdrawal. His body shook, nausea began, and he broke out in cold sweats. His neighbor heard him screaming and knocked on the door. When she entered, Sylvester was lying on the floor, curled up. An ambulance was called, and Sylvester was taken back to the hospital. Returned to hospital, facing reality at the end of June, Sylvester was lying in San Francisco General Hospital again. This time, not just AIDS but morphine addiction was being treated. Doctors made a plan: they would slowly reduce the dose, purify his body of morphine. But Sylvester didn't consent. He looked at the doctor and said, "Don't try to clean me. It's too late for me. Just ease my pain." The doctor tried to convince him, but Sylvester didn't listen. Now there was only one reality for him: he couldn't live without morphine. In July, Dr. Conant decided to review Sylvester's file. He turned the pages, noted each dose, and finally calculated the total number. Since January, in 7 months, Sylvester had received 127 morphine doses. Protocol maximum was 80. Nearly double. Dr. Conant couldn't believe this number. How could this be? Who had prescribed this much morphine? He examined the file more carefully and noticed a shocking detail: some doses were off the record. Nurses had given doses outside protocol to ease Sylvester's pain. Because Sylvester was in so much pain, and they couldn't bear it. Dr. Conant held a meeting with the nurses. He asked them, "Why did you give off-record doses? You know the consequences." The nurses were silent. Finally, Rita spoke, "Doctor, you didn't see him crying. You didn't hear his begging at night. We just wanted to help." Dr. Conant got angry, but he also understood. Because he too had seen Sylvester's pain. And pain was stronger than protocol. In August, Dr. Conant faced a difficult decision. He had to tell Sylvester the truth. One evening, he entered Sylvester's room and sat next to him. Sylvester looked at him, his eyes were tired but still attentive. Dr. Conant took a deep breath and said, "Sylvester, there's something I need to talk to you about. Your morphine addiction has progressed very far. If you continue, your body won't be able to take it. Your respiratory system could collapse. This means death." Sylvester remained silent for a long time. Then he asked, "So what happens if I don't take morphine?" Dr. Conant answered, "The pain becomes unbearable." Sylvester nodded and said, "Then continue." "Because I don't choose pain." The hospital staff began to treat Sylvester differently after that conversation. There was a shift in the air when they entered his room, a weight to their interactions that hadn't been there before. They weren't treating a patient anymore. They were accompanying someone on a journey they knew would end badly, and all they could do was make the path less painful. Late one August night, Rita found herself sitting outside Sylvester's room during her break, listening to the rhythmic beeping of his monitors through the door. She thought about her nursing school training, about the oath to do no harm, about all the clear ethical boundaries she had been taught. None of it prepared her for this, for the gray areas where medicine and humanity collided. She thought about her own father, who had died of cancer 5 years earlier, who had begged for more pain medication in those final days, who had looked at her with eyes that pleaded for mercy the doctors wouldn't give. She had been powerless then. But here, with Sylvester, she had the power to help. The question was whether helping him meant following protocol or following her heart. September, revelation of truth. One night in September, Sylvester was awake. He had just received his morphine dose, but his mind was clear. When Dr. Conant came for a checkup, Sylvester looked directly at him and said, "Doctor, I'm not stupid. Stop lying to me. I know everything." Dr. Conant was surprised. "What do you know?" Sylvester took a deep breath and started talking. "I know I'm addicted to morphine. I know my body is collapsing. And I know I don't have much time left. But I'll tell you something, I choose morphine. Because pain is worse than death." Dr. Conant was shocked. Sylvester knew everything. The addiction, the consequences, the risk. But still, he was choosing morphine. The doctor asked him, "But why? Why do you want so much morphine? Just to ease the pain?" Sylvester shook his head, "No. Not just for pain." Dr. Conant waited. Sylvester continued, "Morphine gives me something. Control. Without morphine, my body isn't mine. Pain controls me. But when I take morphine, I take back control. I manage my own body. Do you understand?" Dr. Conant understood. Sylvester wasn't seeing morphine just as a painkiller. He saw it as power. As a tool of control. Because Sylvester's entire life had revolved around control, controlling his identity, controlling his appearance, controlling his stage. And now, AIDS was controlling him. But morphine gave him back that control, at least for a while. That night, when Dr. Conant returned to his office, he thought for a long time. Ethical rules were clear: morphine addiction should not be encouraged, patients must be protected. But Sylvester's situation was different. He wasn't just trying to live. He was trying to die with dignity. And morphine gave him that dignity. October, final months and the truth of 127 needles. In October, Sylvester's condition worsened further. Pneumocystis pneumonia developed in his lungs, he had difficulty breathing, and he coughed constantly. But the morphine doses continued. He was now taking 6 doses a day. His arms, legs, even his chest were covered with needle marks. Nurses had difficulty finding veins. One day Rita cried. She couldn't take it anymore. Watching Sylvester, seeing him fade away like this, was too hard. Dr. Conant reviewed Sylvester's file again. From January to October, in 10 months, a total of 127 morphine doses. This number was a record. No patient had received this much morphine. And Sylvester was still alive. How was his body enduring morphine? Dr. Conant tried to understand this but couldn't find an answer. Perhaps Sylvester's spirit was stronger than his body. In November, nurses noticed something. They started secretly reducing morphine doses. They were giving Sylvester 8 milligrams instead of 10 milligrams. Maybe he wouldn't notice. Maybe his body would get used to less morphine. But Sylvester noticed. On the 3rd day, he looked at the nurse and said, "Don't try to fool me. You lowered the dose. Bring it back." The nurse was surprised. "How did you know?" Sylvester answered, "I know myself. I know every feeling in my body. And now something is missing." The nurses increased the dose again. They couldn't fool Sylvester anymore. He was feeling every milligram of morphine. His body and morphine were now one. One couldn't exist without the other. By late November, Sylvester's room had become a shrine of sorts. Friends had covered the walls with photographs from better days: Sylvester on stage in his glittering costumes, Sylvester at pride celebrations, Sylvester laughing at private parties where the camera caught him off guard. Someone had brought in a small cassette player, and had played his music on repeat, quietly, like a heartbeat. The disco diva who had commanded stages now lay silent while his own voice sang to him. Visitors came in shifts, holding his hand, telling him stories, reminding him who he had been before the disease and the morphine tried to erase it all. At the beginning of December, Dr. Conant made a decision. He visited Sylvester one last time and told him, "Sylvester, we will continue giving you morphine now. Protocol doesn't matter. You matter." However much morphine you want, we'll give you that much. Sylvester looked at him, and there was gratitude in his eyes. Then he said, "Thank you, doctor. You've given me the chance to die with dignity." December 1988, final days in mid-December, Sylvester's breathing became labored. He couldn't speak anymore. His eyes were open but his gaze was distant. Morphine doses were now being given every hour. His body no longer responded to morphine, it was just surviving. Nurses watched him, held his hands, and waited. December 16, 1988, at 7 in the morning, Dr. Conant arrived at the hospital. He went to Sylvester's room and stopped. The monitors were running slowly. The pulse was very weak. Rita was there, crying. Dr. Conant approached Sylvester and held his hand. Sylvester's eyes opened, for the last time. He looked at the doctor, and his lips moved slightly. Dr. Conant leaned in. Sylvester whispered, "No pain." "Thank you." Then he closed his eyes. The monitors drew a flat line. It was 7:15 a.m. Sylvester James Jr. died. He was 41 years old. There were 127 needle marks on his arms. But there was peace on his face. Aftermath, the legacy of morphine after Sylvester's death, Dr. Conant fought for a long time. 127 morphine doses. This number was a scandal, a tragedy, but also a legacy. Because Sylvester hadn't used morphine just as a painkiller. He had used it as a tool of dignity. As a tool to take back control. And finally, as a tool to experience death on his own terms. Dr. Conant donated Sylvester's file to the AIDS Research Archive. Perhaps in the future, other doctors would look at this file and learn. Morphine wasn't just a drug. For some patients, it was a right to life. A right to dignity. And a right to control. Years later, when Rita retired, she gave an interview. She talked about Sylvester and said, "He taught me so much. Pain isn't just physical. Loss of identity is also pain. Loss of control is also pain." And when Sylvester chose morphine, he actually chose himself. He determined who he was, how he would live, and how he would die. This was his final performance. And it was perfect. Sylvester's gravestone reads, "The voice will never be silenced." And indeed, it hasn't been silenced. His music still plays, his story is still told. But the most important legacy is the morphine story. Because that story is about pain, control, and dignity. And that story isn't just Sylvester's, it's all of ours.